To all the saints, hello. And to the pastors of each nation, thank you for all your hard work. Today, I would like to share with you about the Feast of Ingathering that started through the law at Moses' time. Everyone, please listen carefully. And if you have a better opinion, please always contact us. However, today we must do all of the life of faith in accordance to God's will. This is why we need to know the things of the past, what is now, and the things of the future. If you look at Galatians chapter 4, there's a passage that talks about the things of the past, like the Feast of Ingathering. Do we need to keep the commands of the past, or do we need to throw them away? We need to think about it. Regarding what? The Feast of Ingathering. Everyone, when you hear Feast of Ingathering, what do you think of? The Feast of Ingathering is doing the work of farming all year long, and in the fall, you gather the crops and store it in the barn. This is referred to as the Feast of Ingathering. By any chance, do you know when the Feast of Ingathering is in the nation of Israel? In Israel, when it is April, the wheat is gathered and harvested. I know this well because I went there. The nation of Israel lived in Egypt and they entered into Canaan, right? They entered there and did farming, gathered the crops, and kept the feast before God. In order to make this known to the descendants, they had what is referred to as the Feast of Ingathering. However, as can be seen in Galatians chapter 4, it's saying that the Feast of the Ingathering of the past is not necessary. If this kind of feast was kept, Peter and Paul, they said that they fear that somehow they've wasted their efforts. Hence, today, we must think about this Feast of Ingathering. Yes, that's right. However, we must understand that the Feast of Ingathering that I'm talking about today and the Feast of Ingathering that Paul was talking about at that time and the Feast of Ingathering at the time of Moses are all different. When you say Feast of Ingathering at the time of physical Israel, it was referring to the gathering of grains that we eat. However, the Feast of Ingathering that Paul or Jesus was referring to was not that kind of feast. It was about the Feast of Ingathering people. It's different. This is why it says that the heir owns the whole estate, but when the heir is underage, he's no different from a slave and is subject to guardians and trustees. However, when the time comes, it's written that it won't be like that anymore. That's what it says, right? When the time comes, it's different. That's how the explanation regarding the Feast of Ingathering was done. But today, what I'd like to say to you is not the Feast of Ingathering during the time of Moses. It's not the Feast of Ingathering at the time of Jesus' first coming either. I'm trying to talk about the Feast of Ingathering at the time of the second coming. Then, it's not the grains of the world, but the ripened first crops. If you look at the content of Revelation 14, verse 14 to 16, it was about people and not about the grains of this world. So it has completely changed. Today too, there's a Feast of Ingathering, but you must understand that it's not talking about grains that people eat in order to live. We must understand that. We must awaken our minds, right? That's right. Jesus came to this earth according to the Old Testament prophecies. According to each and every prophecy, he came to this earth, received and ate the open book, and went to the rebellious house of Israel. However, they only insisted on the Mosaic law, and they didn't believe in what Jesus said about the prophecies of the Old Testament. What we need to consider here is, was it correct to believe in what Jesus said? Or was it correct to not believe according to their own judgment? Isn't that right? Everyone, what do you think? Then, everyone, when Jesus came for the first coming, what does it say he did? He came to sow the seed, right? He came to sow God's seed. After sowing the seed, he left. Then what word did he leave and then ascend to heaven? He promised that he would return to harvest and then went, right? And according to the Old Testament, the one who sowed God's seed was Jesus. Isn't that right? At that time, Jesus sowed God's seed in his field. But what kind of event took place? When everyone was sleeping, the devil came secretly and he also sowed his seed. This is why, although it is Jesus' field, two kinds of seed have been growing, the devil's seed and God's seed. The disciples asked, should we pull out the devil's seed? And asked Jesus. What did Jesus say? Did he say, yeah, pull them out? No, right? He said, leave them until the time of the harvest. He said he worries that while pulling out the weeds, you might pull out the wheat as well. Then, when the time for the harvest comes, the harvesters are sent, and those born of God's seed are harvested. That's what it says, right? Then when is this time of the harvest? It clearly says, at the time of the harvest, amongst the two kinds of seed sown in the Church of Jesus, God's seed will be harvested. But when? Where? Isn't that right? That's right. We should know these kinds of facts. In the Old Testament, Jeremiah 31, it's written about the prophecy to sow the two kinds of seed. Jesus came and sowed that seed and established the new covenant. Then that means it could be said that he fulfilled everything that was promised in the Old Testament, right? This is how within the field of the Church of Jesus, the two kinds of seed grew together. Yes, pastors, what do you think? Did Jesus return for the second coming and harvest? If he hasn't harvested, then that means that within the Church of Jesus, the devil's seed, the weeds are growing as it is right now, right? Isn't that right? What has happened? Jesus clearly said that they are growing together. Pastors, are you able to differentiate between the two kinds of people, those born of the weeds and those born of God's seed? Do you know or do you not know? That's right, you don't know. If you knew, you would do everything you can to pull it out. You don't know. One is God's seed, the other is the devil's seed. It's growing in the Church of Jesus. In the church that you're teaching, Pastor, did I say something wrong right now? If you say, not our church, then did Jesus lie? We have to think about it, right? But at the time of the harvest, Jesus comes, and it says the angels will come with him. From the east, west, north, and south, only those born of God's seed, it's written that he will harvest them. But pastors, it's written that those born of God's seed, God's sons, are harvested. Did the harvesters come to your church by chance? Are there two kinds of seed growing in your church as well? Did the harvesters come to your church and harvest? I heard that there are some churches that have the sign, harvesters prohibited entry. I heard from the harvesters. But whether it is this pastor or these people, I don't think they understand what the Bible is, what the word is. I don't think they know how to distinguish east, west, north, and south. I'm sure the pastors who came here today aren't like that. I'm sure the pastors who came here today aren't like that. But let's know what we should know, right? Let's know what we should know. Let's point out what needs to be pointed out, right? Let's verify what we need to verify. That's what it is. Whether you do or not, it's not elsewhere, but the place where Jesus sowed. In that field of Jesus' church, two kinds of seed were sown, two kinds of entities are growing. This is a fact that can't be denied. It says the scriptures cannot be broken. By chance, Pastor, do you know where this reference is from? Do you know or do you not know? Pastors, please speak where it is. Do you know where it is? That's right. It's in John 10, verse 35. It's written that scriptures cannot be broken. But you must do things according to the Bible, right? If you don't want to be a cult, you have to do things according to the Bible. Then, when does that work of harvesting take place? When? It would take place after a certain event takes place, right? Pastor, please stand up and try explaining it once. Pastor, you teach every day, right? It is only when we know something that we can do something. But if we don't know, then of what value is there in having a pastor? If you look at Matthew 24, God's temple is in Jerusalem, and it is the temple of God. It is a temple that God is with. A war took place there. This war took place, and who won and who lost? Jerusalem was destroyed. By whom? By the Gentiles. Wow. If it's God's church, if they're God's pastor, if they're God's servants, why did they lose? Because they fought. How could this be? The reason why they lost, what was it? The people in Jerusalem were deceived. The people in Jerusalem were tempted, and they handed each other over to be killed. This is how the enemy became greater and how Jerusalem was destroyed. And it says the one who destroyed is standing in the holy place, right? Then God's temple, God's church, God's pastor, God's saints were destroyed. This is what is recorded up until Matthew 24, verse 31. It's after this kind of event takes place, Jesus comes with the angels, and from the east and west, he sends the angels and harvests those who are born of God's seed. I'm sure they're busy. Those people, the ones that went out to harvest, they probably saw the sign, harvesters prohibited entry. They probably saw that, and the angels probably saw that too, right? Then, whether you sow the seed of God or the seed of the devil, the two kinds of seed that were sown is a fact. And when is that harvest taking place? God's temple, Jerusalem, after it was destroyed, the work of harvesting takes place. Wow, how can this be? By chance, pastors, your church, was it destroyed? No, right? Because you guys are holy. However, would there be a temple that is more holy than Jerusalem? It says that they were destroyed. If they fought and were won, they would not have been destroyed, right? So, there is no more temple of God, there is no pastor of God, and God's saints have disappeared because they've been broken to pieces. The holy place, the devil's pastor, the destroyer, is standing, and he's standing and ruling, and the education of the devil, that's what has happened, right? Then, no matter, even if they don't know the Bible, they don't know heaven, and they say that when God and Jesus is coming, after what event do they come? Where do they come? After they come, what do they do? It would be good if people would at least even know just a little bit of this, right? Right, Pastor? Even just a little bit. Let's make it known to them. How come only you know and you don't let the saints know? Even if they taught them a little bit, wouldn't it be good? Is it better that people are ignorant and not do anything about it? Oh, it's so frustrating. I'm sure God is so frustrated that he might fall backwards. Let's think about it, pastors. It's hard for people to believe in pastors, and it's hard for God to believe in pastors. Should it be this way? Let's not be this way. There's an old saying, amongst the beggars, Jesus is there. Think about it. Instead of just saying beggars or this or speaking badly, that Jerusalem that was so holy, why did it lose? Why did the devil stand at the pulpit and preach from there? But you know, Jesus said this kind of event must take place for him to return. That if you go to verse 31, that's when it says that, right? Wow. If you don't, I can't understand this. That's what people might say. Then, whether Jesus comes or whether she just doesn't come, what does it mean to me? Should we be that way? Then we're not carrying out a life of faith, right? It says this word will be fulfilled without adding or subtracting. Then we have to believe all of it, and it's in the prophecies. This prophecy will be fulfilled. It's only when it's fulfilled that we could believe and understand. Isn't that right? Are you going to be able to go to the heaven even if you don't know, pastors, because you're holy? But it's better that we know than not knowing. That would be our strength if we knew. It's only when this kind of event takes place that Jesus comes with the angels, and from the east and west, north and south, one by one, what kind of people will he look for? Pastor, should we take a test? If you know or not? How can you take the saints to heaven if it's like that? Oh, it's so frustrating, truly. Isn't that right? He comes with the angels, and then Jesus comes. After Jerusalem is destroyed, east and west, he goes, and he goes to find people. And that's the work of harvesting. What kind of people would he look for? He's going to look for those who are born of God's seed. In this wide, wide world, amongst the world, the seed that Jesus sowed, he's going to find those who are born of that seed. This word, if you go to Revelation 14, verse 14 to 16, if you read there, it's recorded there. He's going to look for these people and appoint them. He's going to appoint them, he's going to find them, harvest them, seal them, and make them a part of the 12 tribes, God's kingdom, and make them into God's people. Isn't that right? Is it just anybody and he just says okay to just anybody? and say, sit here, pastors, since it is the time, we have to wisely teach the saints and so that they would understand completely. Then they would be able to believe and carry out a life of faith. Don't you have the responsibility to make it that way? Think about it at least once. Those who are born of God's seed. Then, how do you know if you're born of God's seed? They all look the same. You could say that too, right? However, those who are born of God's seed would know. That's why you harvest them, because they know. If they don't know, they can't come. That's why those who are born of God's seed enters into the field that is like dirt, the heart that is like a field. You know, even if you cut an apple open, the seed is in there. If you open the watermelon, cut a watermelon, there's seed there too, right? People too, because they have God's seed, the ones who have that seed are harvested, and you teach them again. These people are sealed, and you have to make them into God's people. God's people, God's kingdom, God's organization. Where is that blueprint inside the Bible? Pastor, you know very well, right? Because you taught until now. Do you know or do you not know? A person, because I say I believe in Jesus, after I read the Bible, there are so many things I didn't know. So one day I went to a pastor. This, please teach this. What is this? What does this mean? And he says, I don't know. He should teach it, right? Malachi chapter 2 says a priest is God's messenger, and he must walk with God. And the people must be able to seek truth from his lips. That's what it says, right? That's right. That's what it says. That's how it should be. Today, I want to talk about the Feast of Ingathering, and I've gone a far route. At the time of Moses, that Israel, they went into Canaan and they did farming, and the ones that were harvested, in order to make it known to the future generations, they made that Feast of Ingathering. But we're not going to the land of Canaan. We're going to heaven. We don't need to do that. That kind of law, that kind of command, we don't really need it. Why do we need that? That's why Paul and Peter says, why do you keep on talking about that? Now too, in the past, if you talk about the feast of the past, then, Jesus bore the cross in vain. That's what they said. But today, what do I want to say? It's not the time of a Moses. It's not the time of the first coming. I want to talk about the Feast of Ingathering of today. The Feast of Ingathering of today. Pastors, by chance, do you know the Feast of Ingathering of today? Please talk about it. The Feast of Ingathering of today, Jesus, in Matthew 13, he sowed the seed and said there's a time of harvesting. He said that he would come again. And in Revelation 14, on Mount Zion, 144,000, they're referred to as the first fruits. First fruits. But these first fruits are those who are born of God's seed. That's why this Feast of Ingathering is not the grains of the world, but people, those who are born of God's seed, God's sons. These people are harvested and gathered. This is real harvesting. It's true harvesting. This harvest, after you bring them in, you teach them. This is sealing. The Word is God, and God's Word is God's seal, right? It says that in Hebrews 8, you seal it in your mind and in your hearts, and you put write the laws on their minds and hearts. This is truly being sealed. These people is not one or two people, but 144,000. Each tribe, 12,000 each. 144,000. This is the sealed number. This number that is sealed. There are no people outside of them that are sealed. It is only when this is created, afterwards, you have the multitude in white. Then, if you go to Revelation 14, on Mount Zion, 144,000, it says they are the first fruits. The first fruits. And if you go to Revelation 14, verse 14 to 16, the seed that Jesus sowed, they became ripened and they were harvested. This is the work of harvesting, and this is Jesus' return, and this is those who are born of God's seed. Pastors, please listen carefully. It is only when you listen well, then you can point out the faults and say, hey, how come you're saying this? Then you can't point out the faults, right, if you don't. Jesus, at the time of Moses, they sowed the seed, they harvested, what they ate. But that's not what we're talking about. Jesus sowed his seed and he left. And at the time of the second coming, Jesus is harvesting. He's not harvesting beans or anything else. He's harvesting people, those who are born of God's seed. God's sons he finds them and he appoints them as the 12 tribes. These 12 tribes is God's kingdom. God's kingdom. That's right, right? When we look at it in general, in Genesis chapter 2, if you go over there and read, and if you go to chapter 1, there are many fruits on that tree that's created. And there are fruits that you can eat. But there is a very peculiar tree, two of them. These two trees are in the middle. God's throne is also in the middle. It's in the middle. One is the tree of life, and the other is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But what's strange is that if you go to Revelation, chapter 17, also chapter 18, chapter 19, if you go there, I keep on thinking of new things. And if you go to chapter 22, hey, what appeared 6,000 years ago in the Garden of Eden, that tree of life, if you go to Revelation, it's there. But this tree of life, let's see how it looks like. Every month, 12 kinds of crops. It bears 12 kinds of crops every month. Wow, what kind of tree is this in this world? What is it? The tree of life. And Jesus came at the time of the first coming and he says, I'm the true vine. I'm not the wild vine. I'm the true vine. He said that. And then he said, the branch that doesn't bear fruit is cut off. And the one who listened to Jesus' word, bear much fruit. And how many disciples did Jesus have? 12, right? Each branch bore fruit. Jesus said he's a true vine, and that vine, and in Revelation 22, verse 2, that tree of life, how is it different? What's different? Pastors, you go around the world. Have you seen the tree of life when you go around the world? If you don't eat from the fruit of the tree of life, you can't have eternal life, right? You have to eat it in order to have eternal life. That fruit of that tree of life in Revelation 22, it's there. So if you look at this tree, every month, 12 kinds of crops, it bears fruit. It's very peculiar. That leaf is for the healing of the nations. That's what it says. Then, if you look at Jesus, you have Jesus, 12 disciples of Jesus from Jesus' standard, right? And those who belong to Jesus, it says they are cleansed by what Jesus said. Then the fruits that are born from that tree would be good fruits, right? But if you look also in Revelation 17 and 18, if you look there, you have a woman named Babylon, a prostitute. That prostitute is referred to as Babylon. Babylon's organization, that kingdom. These people, they just eat and drink. What do they do? They eat and drink the wine of adultery. You drink it, I drink it. Everybody is drinking it and gulping it down. They drank so much of it. Where did they get that? This wine of adultery. Grapes is actually from a fruit tree. It's the fruit. They gulp it down. In Isaiah chapter 5, you have good vine and you also have wild vine. The two got married and became one tree. That's why these people, if you look at the organization is different. One is the kingdom of demons, Babylon, the vine of adultery. The other is God's kingdom, the true vine. Today, these two organizations appear and judgment is carried out. One is drinking the wine of adultery. That means that it's not God's wine. However, in Revelation chapter 22, every month, 12 kinds of crops bear fruit. This tree of true vine, from the throne of God, the water of life as clear as crystal flows down the streets of the middle of the city, and on each side of the river stood the tree of life bearing 12 crops of fruit. That wouldn't be the tree of the devil, right? So one is the tree of the devil that produces wine of adultery, and the other one is God's true vine. These two appear. But you might think, why am I talking about this as we talk about the Feast of Ingathering? But after harvesting, after finding those who are born of God's seed, you harvest them, and to them, you teach them, and then you seal them. And after that, the 12 tribes, God's kingdom is created. And after that, they bear fruit, 12 kinds of fruit every month. This is referred to as the tree of life. Then, this organization of God, that tree of life, this tree of life is God's organization and it's God's kingdom. Those who are harvested become the fruits of this tree. And if you become the fruit of this tree, what do you become? You become the fruit of the tree of life. The devil has the devil's fruits from that tree of the devil. If you eat that, you're going to die. And if you eat from the tree of life, you will live eternally. So everyone, in the past, at the time of Moses, they had the Feast of Ingathering, but it doesn't mean that it was anything good. At the time of the first coming, you had the Feast of Ingathering. That wasn't good either. At the time of Revelation, you harvest, you seal, and you create God's kingdom. And that's the tree of life. That's why in Revelation, Jesus sowed the seed of God. At the time of the second coming, those who are born of God's seed are harvested, right? They're gathered. You gather them, you harvest and you gather them. That's why these people become the new kingdom of God and they become the people of God. This is the Feast of Ingathering of today. You sow the seed, and when they become the ripened fruits, ripened grain, at the time of the second coming, these are all harvested and gathered, and through them, they become God's kingdom, they become God's tree of life, and it's only this tree that exists eternally. It is only them that receive the water of life as clear as crystal from the throne of God. Then it says Jesus will come and sow the seed. Jesus came and sowed the seed. And Jesus returned for the second coming. He came at the time of the second coming, and those who are born of God's seed, he gathered them. The ones that Jesus gathered, he created them to become God's kingdom. This is what I'm trying to say. Today, through this time, I want to say to all the pastors of the world and to all the saints, I'd like to say one word. Everyone, even if it's uncomfortable, please listen. In the whole world, if you're not born of God's seed, you cannot enter into God's kingdom. Those who are born of God's seed at the time of the second coming are the ones who are harvested. The ones who are harvested, Jesus, according to the blueprint in Revelation, are created. If it's not created according to Revelation, they cannot be God's new kingdom, new people, the people of heaven. You must understand this. Shincheonji, this kingdom has been created according to Revelation. That's why you have to compare with Revelation. Not one thing, not one little thing. I would like to say that everything is created according to Revelation. And I want to say that to all the pastors of this world. God promised to create a new kingdom, a new heaven and a new earth, and today God did it. Everyone, please remember this. This kind of feast of ingathering, even if you say feast of ingathering, Jesus sowed God's seed, and today he came, and those who are born of God's seed, he gathered them, and he created the 12 tribes, God's kingdom. This is the work of feast of ingathering. This is what God truly, this is the true work of feast of ingathering. You have to think about it that way. God, according to Revelation, after he completes everything, then God fulfilled everything that he wanted to fulfill. Then the kingdom of heaven in the spiritual world comes down to the kingdom that's created here on earth accordingly. And Mary has a marriage in Revelation 19, and in chapter 20, participate in the first resurrection, and this Bible is completely fulfilled. How is it fulfilled? You should verify. Also, just like this water, the wine is diluted, verify whether if something else has been diluted. Shincheonji has been created according to this revelation. To all the pastors and to the saints, I want to make it known. To you as well, may God's grace be I hope that you are filled with God's grace. We are all same people born on the same earth, and the Bible is one and God is one. If we really believe in God, within God, we have to become one within God, right? Shall we do this once? And let's become one. We are one. Thank you very much.